When your identity was leaked, did anyone lose their lives? Anyone you worked with die as a result of, compromising your identity?
What I can say is that a damage report was done by the CIA. I never saw it. I don't believe any members of Congress have seen it. I can say that the damage was serious. But even beyond my own network of assets with whom I had worked, there's the ripple effect going outwards. If maybe there is a potential source out there in some foreign country who has critical information he wants to share or sell to the US government, and he hears the story and he says, now wait a minute, they couldn't even protect one of their own. Why should I jeopardize myself and my family if they can't even take care of that? So I'm going to take my information and go someplace else. So that's why what these senior administration officials did is so traitorous.
You were working on counterproliferation issues with regard to Iraq. Now, where did things go wrong? How did we get it so wrong? How did the media get it so wrong? And obviously the intelligence officials in terms of stating unequivocally that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction.
Well, there's a lot of questions in that one.
Yeah.
Let me tackle this bit by bit. As you know, there were no UN inspectors in Iraq since 1998. So right after 9/11, as our focus shifted from Afghanistan to Iraq, and we started looking at that as the administration, here's our next target sort of thing, our intelligence available on the ground at that time was very thin. We had very little access into the country. We had very little idea of where the Iraqi scientists were in their research, where were they procuring their items, what were they focused on, where were their secret sites, all of those things. That's what I and my former colleagues were doing on the Iraq task force. We were, frankly, working our tails off trying to get solid intelligence to US policymakers. What I feel was that it clearly was a rush to war. It takes time. It takes time to find a source. It takes time to vet them, to corroborate that information. And every day we're getting so much information coming over the transom. But it's not all good, of course. In fact, most of it isn't. And you just have to pick out the little pieces that are worthwhile and then follow the thread. But that takes time, and there really was a rush to war. The CIA on this issue, I think, did the best it possibly could to try to say, on the nuclear threat issue, that in pulling it out of earlier speeches and testifying that it was too thin and too patchy. But there's where I fault the entire intelligence community was that dissent was certainly stifled, or it wasn't highlighted at all to the policymakers. For instance, the aluminum tubes. There was a deep and bitter debate in the intelligence community on what these were used for. There was a CIA analyst who won the day on this, but there was vigorous debate about what, that they didn't agree with him. And yet that was relegated to very tiny font in footnotes in the NIE, which was packed together, the National Intelligence Estimate, which was done in the fall of 2002. So that's just one example. It was, the best way of putting it is a cascade of errors.
Yeah.
On every level.
And then you were also doing some work with Iran. Are you able to discuss that?
No.
Okay. Do you think that Iran poses a threat to our country or a threat to the region?
Well, there's no question that they have pursued a secret nuclear program for at least 18 years. And that they are an unstable and potentially very dangerous powerhouse in that region. However, given this administration's terrible missteps in Iraq, it has so weakened our strategic position and thus enhanced Iran's without them having to do very much, frankly. Our moral authority, our political authority, our credibility has been so greatly diminished by what has the debacle in Iraq, that we are in a very difficult position, and our options are frankly quite limited.
Your book is just recently landed on the New York Times bestseller list. That has to be some sort of vindication, a feeling of
accomplishment.
Accomplishment. Yes, thank you. Despite the fact that there are some portions that are blacked out.
I am just thrilled I have a book. It's been a long 4.5 years. Everyone else in the world has talked about this, spoken about me, and finally I get to tell this story. And it's so important because it is the story of the consequences of speaking truth to power. And how, Joe and I, how important we feel it is for citizens to hold their government to account for their words and deeds. As you may know, this summer, I and my publisher, Simon & Schuster, sued the CIA because we felt that they were moving into censorship and First Amendment territory. It wasn't a question of protecting classified information. I'm a professional intelligence officer. I don't want to jeopardize classified information. Right. But it was clearly punitive in nature, the redactions, the black lines, which, by the way, my publisher also decided to leave in so that the reader has a good idea of how much the CIA thought was classified. Right. But what we also did was add an afterword by investigative journalist Laura Rosen. And she drew upon all the information available in the public domain and interviews to do what I think is a really good essay that helps the reader get the whole story.
And your attorneys made the judge aware that this was information in the congressional record.
That's right.
Okay.
If I may add, my lawyers have very kindly put together a website. It's called fairgameplain.com. It's really well done. It has all the court documents there, describes the background. I think it's very easy to read and understand. We are appealing this. And although it's only a small piece of the story, I think it's an important piece because it shows the continuation of a vindictiveness and an abuse of power by this administration to go after its critics.
What was that like for you, sitting down, hunkering down to write?
I found it very much a catharsis. We lived it the first time at about 120 miles an hour. There was so much happening with all the attacks coming down, all the things that were going on from, as I say, our threats, our loss of privacy. They went after Joe's business, all the charges against me of nepotism, against Joe of being a liar, a traitor. So we were just trying to get through the day. So when I finally got to write it, it was helpful for me to help put it into context, absorb it, understand it a little better. And I tell the story of an amazing career. I loved doing what I was doing, working on counterproliferation issues, and the training that I went through at the CIA's farm, the paramilitary stuff, the operations that I can tell to a certain extent in the run-up to the war, the type of creative things that we were doing, and then the fallout when I'm all of a sudden a public person.
As you were writing it, did you stumble upon anything? Were you able to put some pieces together, or what did you learn as you were writing?
That's a good question. What it allowed me to do is I was researching certain events that were happening to us, and I was reading contemporaneous news reports. I had a much better picture. I tried not to read too much of the really vile, evil stuff because it's just not healthy. Yeah. But I had to do so that I really understood what the context was. Yeah. As difficult as this has been for Joe and I personally, and some very dark days in there, we never lost sight of the fact of this is nothing compared to what families of servicemen in Iraq feel every day, and the sacrifice that they have made for a terrible mistake.
Valerie Plame Wilson's book, Fair Game, just landed on the New York Times bestseller list. She and her publisher are pursuing a lawsuit against the CIA, claiming her First Amendment rights were violated when the agency heavily redacted her book. She still hopes that the public will get an opportunity to read the unredacted version down the road. In Los Angeles, this is Jason Leopold reporting for Truth Out.